Is wokeness really dead, or was it something much worse than we originally thought? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. When Trump won the 2024 re-election, many saw this as the defeat of wokeness. It was a cure to the far left's woke mind virus, ushering in the dawn of a new anti-woke era. After all, Trump and his allies promised that they would get rid of the woke generals, woke education, and woke federal programs. On top of that, there are signs that far-left woke ideology is losing its grip on society, and in some really big ways. Look no further than large businesses like Boeing and Walmart. Both are backing away from woke programs like DEI. And do I really need to mention Bud Light? After facing backlash for an ad many perceived as woke, it did a 180 with ads like this, re-emphasizing its roots in the sports world. They even had an ad making a little fun of woke culture that had comedian Shane Gillis in it. In the video game industry, Sony canceled the game Concord, at least partially because many saw it as too woke. Even the New York Times joined in and is saying identity politics is losing its grip on the country. But is woke really disappearing? Not so much. The woke way of thinking still persists. Look no further than how people are responding to the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. Rather than being sad or angry that a man was shot in cold blood, many Americans actually celebrated his murder, laughed at it, and even made jokes about it. People went as far as to call the shooter a saint and celebrated the assassination with a shooter look-alike contest. Why in the world would so many people celebrate the cold-blooded murder of someone? Well, because of what he came to represent. The healthcare insurance industry and how it often denies coverage and reimbursement for medical claims. It's no coincidence that United Healthcare has garnered a reputation of allegedly having a high denial rate, as much as 32% according to Value Penguin. So a lot of people feel absolutely no sympathy for someone who they see as getting rich off people being denied insurance despite paying thousands of dollars. He was the oppressor, and the oppressed have every right to rise up and kill the oppressor. Sound familiar? It should be noted that this assassination did not actually change how American healthcare is run. But the strange thing about this killing is it's shown how prevalent this ideology is in not just the left, but also the right. And so there's not just a woke left, but a woke right. Now, woke is a controversial term today. For years, many on the left insisted that there was no such thing. And now that the term is being used against some on the right, many on the right are saying there's no such thing. But since this conversation about the woke right began with author and critic James Lindsay, let's use his definition. The founding premise of woke ideology is that there is no shared reality we inhabit because perception determines reality, and perception is shaped by social position with respect to power. All right, that's a lot to unpack. What Lindsay is basically saying is that the woke perspective is one where there is absolutely no shared reality because how we see the world actually shapes reality. But it doesn't end there. Take that and add the idea that how we see the world is defined by power and your position in society. So essentially, there's no truth and everything is molded by power. It's a very postmodern way of understanding the world. This is very different from how the mainstream media simply explains woke. They tend to focus on becoming more aware of social injustices, including bias, discrimination, and double standards. But that's not accurate at all. It's Marxism. With Lindsay's definition, we can see that the woke believes society is shaped by systems of power that enforce dominance and oppression through group identities. It also includes the idea that to be woke is to be awakened to the truth, that society is structured in ways that keeps injustice alive. It's got a lot of Gnostic mysticism in it. Those who have woken up know the true hidden history of the world. They act on this knowledge to dismantle the powerful groups and their systems of power. In BLM's case, by protesting and using donor money to buy themselves mansions. The woke left focus on bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, white people versus non-whites, heterosexual men versus non-heterosexuals. The oppressed, proletariats, non-whites, non-heterosexuals, must radically alter society to create an ideal society on Earth. Ideal to whom exactly? Well, them, of course. This is why the woke put so much effort on DEI programs, teaching people to map out systems of oppression and to engage in political activism. It's also why some resort to revolution.
We must have revolution so we can have a socialist reconstruction of the United States of America.
As we all know, the woke left is nothing new. We've been well aware of them for over a decade at this point. But what is the woke right? Sounds like an oxymoron, like jumbo shrimp or non-creepy mime. James Lindsay describes it as people who push trad values and right-wing ends using woke leftist means, including postmodernism, critical theory, and Marxist conflict theories. Now I want to take a moment to distinguish this from the far right or alt-right, which are meaningless slurs thrown out by the mainstream media against anyone right of Elizabeth Warren. The woke right is a completely different and unique group from the mainstream right. Even though it's new, some popular cultural figures like James Lindsay, Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee, and satirist Konstantin Kisin have all identified what they see as wokeness on the right. And much like the woke left, the woke right have adopted the same framework of oppressor-oppressed and also embrace identity politics. They too believe that the world is structured by powerful groups and their systems of power. So what do the woke right believe? According to author and Christian apologist Neil Shenvi, the woke right thinks society is divided into straight white men and their enemies due to hegemonic norms, and normal people are blind to this, so they must be red-pilled to retake the West. Again, the Gnostic awakening. The oppressors are anyone who they believe created and maintained the liberal world order we live in today since the end of World War II. To prove just how much the woke left and woke right have in common, James Lindsay trolled the right-wing Christian publication The American Reformer, as he considers them moderates in the woke right. How did he do this? Through his old tricks, by submitting a paper using part of the Communist Manifesto. Only instead of keeping references to the bourgeoisie, Lindsay switched it with terms like liberalism, liberals, and classical liberalism, or as they would call it, the post-war liberal consensus. He also swiped out references to the proletariat with references to the new Christian right. This is similar to how Lindsay trolled a far-left feminist social work academic journal into accepting a rewrite of Hitler's Mein Kampf, rewritten for intersectional feminism. Now, as I mentioned earlier, many people say the woke right is a bad label because it has no institutional power, which they claim is a requirement. The woke right has no control of the media, academia, or the government that the woke left has enjoyed. It's not even close. But now that the right is coming into power, some conservatives want to make sure the woke right doesn't get any institutional power. They predict this will create fighting within the party due to differences of worldviews, very much how the same thing has happened with the progressives and the Democratic Party. There's also an argument to be made that focusing on identity, grievance, and oppression aren't necessarily woke. After all, history is full of examples of people bringing up identity, grievances, and oppression in politics. That's just life. If just talking about these things count as woke, then is the American Revolution woke? It forged an American identity apart from the British. The Declaration of Independence is chock full of grievances against the British king. And American revolutionaries complained about a lot of oppression. Yet nobody goes around saying the American Revolution was a communist revolution. Well, Christopher Rufo makes an interesting argument. He says that the Founding Fathers used identity to unify people to become productive and virtuous Americans. Their grievances focused on how the Crown oppressed them by taking away their rights and freedoms, hurting their fortunes, and preventing self-governance, all of which pointed to liberty, economic growth, and limited government. This is unlike the woke, who are different in that they specifically use identity to divide Americans and pit them against one another in a zero-sum struggle. It's the difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. The oppressors might differ in name between the woke left and the woke right, but the tactics and driving ideology are the same. Their grievance and oppression narrative push the idea that the state should have more power, which in turn leads to hatred, economic stagnation, and state tyranny. Now, because this is the internet and people freak out, I'm not saying MAGA is the woke right. I'm saying that people who think Marx had a lot of good ideas and want to implement them using the same strategies are all of a piece. It's just sometimes people can't trace their ideas back to Marx and so they don't realize it. They need to wake up. I guess you could say I'm woke to woke. And before YouTube kicks you to a random video, click on this episode I know you're going to love. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thank you for watching America Uncovered.